Greetings, brothers and sisters. So Hunter Biden, his laptop has revealed in emails to his lawyer that he called his lawyer the N Word multiple times. His lawyer who's white, and I'll get into that in just a moment. But if you Google Hunter Biden racist, you'll see that Forbes published an article, but then if you go to Forbes' site, you can see they've blocked it out. This page is no longer active. We regret any inconvenience. And it starts off here, then it fades. But the headline read for Forbes, racist Hunter trending following accusations that Hunter Biden used racial slurs in texts. And Forbes is the only mainstream media organization that isn't the New York Post, which is right-wing, and Fox News, which is right-wing, and the Daily Mail that is gossip and right-wing. Hannity slams the mainstream media for refusing to cover Hunter's racist text. I saw Hannity. I just happen to be going through the news channels. I never even see him. And he had a couple of guests on talking about this. The Sun newspaper. So most of the mainstream media organizations, New York Times, right, Washington Post, these are political organizations, CNN and MSNBC, and then any of the three major networks, ABC, NBC, and CBS, none of them are covering this. And I come back to this because it should be stunning, but it's not. Like, this shows you how pathetic the mainstream media is. If you Google Hunter Biden racist or just Hunter Biden, it doesn't come up with any of these articles, right? None of them are covering it. And you see here's Hunter Biden. I've clicked on the news tab here for, Google. And none of these sites say anything about a fact check, right? So when a story breaks that's controversial and damaging to Joe Biden and is, coming from either the truth community or coming from the right wing or, Trump or Trumpers, they immediately fact check it. And they find some detail to say why it's wrong, or they say it's not conclusive, right? Doesn't say anything about this. And so that's all the stories there. If you click on all, right, this should be being fact checked here. And here, if you search Hunter Biden is racist, you go under news again, there's no fact checkers. Where are all the fact checkers, right? This story's been out for a while, at least a day now. And so it doesn't say anything about presidential debate, Trump and Biden's claims fact checked, but it doesn't say anything about Hunter Biden, right? They always fact check these things. And so even if you click on here on all, there's no fact checkers. Where are the fact checkers, right? This is going around the internet because they're not even denying. They might say, well, this hard drive isn't conclusive that it's Hunter Biden's because he hasn't admitted to it, but we know it is. And they're not even doing that. They're not even throwing in question the source. And so the fact checkers aren't even trying to dispute this. They're just simply all ignoring it, which is, really effed up. And so here I search for Hunter Biden racist slurs fact check. And they have something from, this is something political fact from political fact checking claims about Hunter Biden and Joe Biden in China. And this, I don't know what the date on this article is. Should be up here somewhere. This is from October 19th, 2020. And so this is from right before the election. And that's the second thing that they show here. If you go under news tab, there's nothing. There's a Forbes article that disappeared. And this is the presidential debate. And so they don't have it. They're not fact checking this. Like, even if you put in fact checking in the search, they're not fact checking this because they don't want you to know that it's fact. So let's go to the first article. Hunter Biden repeatedly called his white lawyer the N Word text show. This is his lawyer to get some perspective on this thing, right? So this is where he starts off. George Messiahs, I'm not sure. The younger Biden asked Chicago-based corporate attorney George Messiers, "How much money do I owe you?" That's a weird name, Messiers. "How much money do I owe you? Because N Word, you better not be charging me Hennessy rates." You know how Hunter Biden likes his the champagne room in the strip club, right? The private rooms. And then Messiah said, "That made me snarf my coffee." And then Biden said back, "I just made that phrase up, by the way. You're a genius, Hunter." Hennessy rage. I should have had your lineage. I'm not sure. Your lineage. "Apparently you do," answered Messiahs. And he said, and then Biden responded, "That's what I'm saying, N-word." And so this is the text here. These emails have been basically confirmed. All this stuff on his laptop has been confirmed by Hunter Biden, who said, "I don't know, maybe it is," right? Like, "I don't know what I was doing back then. I was on crack, so these things could be mine." Like, he didn't deny it. Joe Biden didn't deny it. And I'll come back to that. So there's more here, but we know that he has, on a laptop that I think has been overwhelmingly proven that it is Hunter's, and the media's ignoring this. So it should be shocking, right? It should be it should be shocking that the son of the president used the N-word in multiple emails. I mean, it's really effed up. Like, especially now. I mean, it would never be, it would always be a big story. It would never be a not story, right? The son of the president uses the N-word in my lifetime is always a story, a big story, a major story. And, this is a crackhead son. I'll go through his whole history in a moment. But it's a story. It's a big story. And especially now, under this climate, the BLM stuff, everything that's going on, the racial tensions, the fact that Joe Biden has ran on support from the African American community. His actual, campaign was saved in South Carolina by that guy Clyburn and the African American community. I mean, he relied heavily. I mean, he said it over and over again. And so that's how Joe Biden has, branded himself. And his son is using a very offensive term, the most offensive term. This is big news in a time where cancel culture is everywhere. People are getting canceled for being in some ball when they were 19 years old, or, very superficial level racist stuff. Like, all these things that are questionably racist, people are getting canceled for. And so when the son of the president uses the N-word and it comes out, this is news, right? It's news. And more than that, there should be apologies. And I don't like these fake apologies. They're not for me. But these apologies are happening all the time. And people are having to apologize and make clarifying statements and vowing to do better for being associated with racist people or organizations that are possibly racist, or any number of things. There are these apologies everywhere. People are giving these apologies and vowing to do better and wanting to learn, and all these things. Look at what happened to that girl on The Bachelor, and just what happened recently from that actress who was on The Office, that they were involved with organizations that had some possibly racist ties. And there's almost a story every day about some old tweet or some old, even older than before Twitter, where somebody did something or said something, or was it, connected to other people who were racist in some way. And then the apologies and the, I'm going to work on myself, and all these things that go with it. And so where's that from JoJo Magoo and his son? Because Trump was criticized over and over again for not denouncing white supremacist groups. They were saying that he was connected to these groups and that he should therefore denounce them. Remember when Diane Sawyer pressed Mel Gibson to denounce his father for some anti-Semitic and racist things that he allegedly said.
That beacon of journalistic integrity, the New York Times, was, dispatched someone to go down there and take advantage of my father, even before I could finish filming. So, but, do you think they really want to know what my dad has to say, or did they ever want to know before I started making this film? I don't think so. It's a thing to try and drive a wedge in between a man's own flesh and blood. That's my father, okay? I love him. And if they're going to try and drive a wedge in there, it ain't going to happen.
I think people wondered if your father's views were your views on this.
Their whole agenda here, my detractors, is to drive a wedge between me and my father. And it's not going to happen. I love him. He's my father.
And you will not speak publicly about him beyond that?
I'm tight with him. He's my father. Gotta leave it alone, Diane.
And so they wanted him to denounce his own father. You have people who are pressured to do this. So Joe Biden certainly owes the American people an apology for his crackhead son for using the N Word, and Hunter Biden also. They need to come out publicly. I mean, based on the standards that already been set, and Joe Biden has real power, and even Hunter Biden has influence because of his father. So this is real white privilege here. This is a guy who's a lifelong politician, who's the president of the United States, and he is making policies right now about racism, speeches about racism, and he owes the African-American community a lot, and he certainly should apologize. And, there should be more to it than just that, based in the cancel culture. Because, so many people have been canceled for far less. Those people are actresses and actors and reality TV stars and, internet celebrities, right? Social media celebrities. And they don't have nearly as much power and influence as the president. And so, Hunter Biden and JoJo Magoo should be canceled by this thing. And it should be shocking that they're not covering this. But as soon as I heard this is last night, I heard that Hunter Biden had been, his emails show that he was using the N-word. I Googled it looking for if any mainstream media outlets were going to cover this, even mention it. And there were none. So I've had sort of a morning. My dog Buddy just jumped out of bed and threw up on the floor. I put him outside. And earlier today we had trapped raccoons. We've had 9 raccoons we've trapped in the last 10 or so days. I mean, we had raccoons take some of our chickens. It was a whole thing. And I had no idea there were so many raccoons about our property, apparently. And so that's been a thing. So I had to deal with that this morning. And I switched mics. There's things that go on here on a technical level that people don't understand. But for years, I've used a handheld mic with a cord. And I've used various versions of Audio-Technica mics. And the cords eventually start to cause problems. The cord from the mic to the computer. And I found a mic that had a USB-C, which is for the backs, right? And like that's, they have a different USB port. It's smaller. And so most of the mics I've had a USB-C to a specific, a specific plug for the mic itself, right? One of those, it's not important, but this mic had a USB-C port in the mic itself. So I had a USB-C cord going from the mic to the computer, and the cords eventually go. You can hear the interference. Like if I move the mic, you'll hear sort of a bumping sound, and so it, caused a little bit of problems with the audio over the years. And the older the cord, the worse it would be, and the more interference it would cause. So I started to get other USB-C cords, but none of those worked with the mic. I called the company. They didn't have any replacement cords, and so it was just a hassle. And the cords are always a problem, so I wanted to try a different type of mic. I have a like Bluetooth mic now that's cordless. So it might change the way my voice sounds a little bit. I mean, they all have a little bit of a different sort of sound quality or whatever it is. And so this one seemed to be working fine yesterday, and it worked in everything but Adobe Audition. You know, I start off in ScreenFlow, like I did the original part of this video in ScreenFlow, which is a screen capture app. And then I moved over to Adobe Audition to do this longer voiceover. It's easier for me to edit it and things like that. So it's just, when I do a long voiceover part of the video, I go to Adobe Audition. And the mic works fine in Premiere Pro, which is the Adobe software that I use to put all the video together and render it. It worked fine in all my other applications, but wasn't working in Adobe Audition. I was on a lengthy chat with an Adobe employee and then eventually a phone call. So that took about an hour. So I finally got all this stuff working and I'm like wiped out, and my dog starts puking on the floor. So there are these things that are going on, during the video process. I mean, there's always, something, maybe not something this distracting. And when I make these, videos with the ScreenFlow, when I'm capturing a video, let's say I'm running a trailer or somebody's Instagram video, I have to match up the volume of, my recording, my voice recording, the voiceover part, with whatever I'm recording. And this one has very low volume, so it works well. I think it's going to work well, this new mic. I'm just trying it out. But there are these issues, right, matching up the volume. And on my old mic, I used to have to turn off the mic to record something on my computer using the internal mic with the MacBook Pro. Maybe some of you guys remember this. I used to not do that. I used to leave my mic on, and it would have this, sort of echo in it. And it was pretty, it's pretty distracting. And then I realized if I turned my mic off, that wouldn't happen anymore. But what would happen was when I turned my mic off, it would make a loud sound, right? And so that was like something I had to edit out. So if you can understand, if I'm making a long video where I'm doing a lot of, I show you a video and then I make a comment on the video, and it could be, 40 minutes long, and I'm going to have 20 of these things that I have to edit out later, and then I have to match up the volume. So there's all these technical things that go along with making these videos. I just want people to be aware of them, because I usually don't talk about them, but they're, a part of it. There's always something, like with anything to do with computers, things glitch out, or you have, there's always these things. But anyways, I got a new mic. So going back to this thing I was saying about Hunter Biden, I learned about this new revelation from his, hard drive, his computer hard drive, and I immediately searched the news to see if any of these left-leaning mainstream media organizations were covering it, and of course they weren't. And I would have been shocked if they were, because their position was to pretend that this hard drive that clearly has connections to Hunter Biden, because it has pictures of him. It has emails. Both Joe Biden and Hunter Biden have not denied it's his. In fact, Hunter Biden basically admitted it on, some recent interview. He said it might be, or probably, I don't remember, I was smoking crack, right? That was his defense, more or less, that it could be because he was dropping off hard drives everywhere. See, what happened was he was smoking crack. I mean, he wrote a whole book about his crack usage, and I'll come back. This is going to be a thread throughout this, narrative in this video, because that in itself is a huge story. And he was on Jimmy Kimmel, and Jimmy Kimmel was patting his back for writing this book about being a crack addict. This is the president's son. And so this is a scandal. When the president has a crackhead son, and I'm going to go through what I can remember off the top of my head about some of his adventures, plus his crackhead son is tied to foreign governments and foreign companies getting money while he's smoking crack. And so what he said on Jimmy Kimmel was that he was, doing all these things that he doesn't even remember, smoking crack. And I guess he dropped his laptop in the bathtub and he brought it to a computer repair shop, and the guy was sitting in there, waiting for Hunter Biden to come collect it. He didn't have Hunter Biden's phone number, and he realized what he had, and so he handed it over to the FBI, which basically buried it and didn't let anybody know that this existed. And there was multiple investigations going on about it, but they were hiding it from the mainstream media and the people, not really the mainstream media. And then Rudy Giuliani, among other people, got access to it, and they turned it over to the New York Post, which posted various stories from it, and these stories were blackballed. They were scrubbed from social media. So if you talked about the New York Post stories and this laptop, and this was an October surprise. Remember, this came out at the end of the summer, September, October. And so this should have been a bombshell, and the mainstream media refused to cover it. They said it was Russia trying to hijack the election when it showed pictures of Hunter Biden. There were things on there that had to come from him and his laptop. There were emails and things, stories. And then the election happened. It turned out that they were doing an investigation, and I'll come back to that, about a handgun and things. Another disturbing story from this guy. I'm going to list everything. Again, just off the top of my head, the adventures of Hunter Biden. But after the election was over, it was basically confirmed that this was his laptop. It was confirmed by they stopped denying it. Like, they just basically were, just not talking about it. And then Hunter Biden came out and said, well, I don't know for sure because I don't remember. But I was dropping things off all over the place. He had laptops and hard drives all over town because he was smoking crack, and he was, banging strippers and couldn't remember fathering kids. I'll come back to that because that's a whole part of the narrative. I want to come back to all those things. And so this was all news, big news, and it's funny. Like, comedians should be having a field day with this. The president has a crackhead son, and there's implications, financial implications, and, inappropriate type of business relationships. I mean, this is not just funny, but it's also a scandal. But the mainstream media decided not to cover anything about this laptop ever, no matter how much it was proved that it was, true. And Hunter Biden confirmed so much when he wrote a book about his crack addiction, that this, laptop and the story behind it and his basically admitting to it all now made this thing legitimate, and the mainstream media refuses to cover it. It's the New York Post and maybe some other media organizations like the Daily Mail here or whatever it is. But they simply won't cover it. It's, it would be bizarre, but it's become normal. It's normalized. Like, I would be shocked if they did cover it. And like I said, they didn't fact check it. Like, they didn't say, all right, when you Google Hunter Biden and the N Word or Hunter Biden racist, there's no fact checking sites that are saying that this isn't true, because they're not even denying that this is his hard drive anymore. And usually when you search for one of these, they have something that's so-called controversial, the fact checking sites will immediately grab onto it and tell you that it is, non-conclusive, or it's only partially true, or they'll find some part of the story that's not true. They're not doing that at all. They're not even trying to deny that Hunter Biden said the N-word, because it's his laptop, his hard drive, and his emails, and we know the guy has said it. And him saying that is a huge scandal. It should ruin Joe Biden, his presidency. And the way that the media goes and social media goes, it should be all over the place, but it's not. And so this shows you just how greasy and how one-sided the mainstream media is. It's not media anymore. It's propaganda. So let's go through it. Let's go through the story of Hunter Biden once again. So there's two parts of this. There has always been, or there usually is, some sort of a screw-up in the family of the president, right? Somebody who is, newsworthy because they're a screw-up. Every family has their screw-ups, and, the person that just can't get their crap together, right? And so with Jimmy Carter was his brother Billy. He had this thing called Billy Beer, and, people paid attention to him. There was Roger Clinton, George W. Bush was the screw up in his family. Ron Reagan had his son Ronnie, who's now, come out as an atheist again. And so they all have their people, the person in their family that's kind of an embarrassment. And the media loves to cover the screw up, right? And also in politics, you have Joe Biden was a screw up for Obama. Oftentimes, the vice president, Dan Quayle, you have somebody who, the Ed McMahon to the Johnny Carson, who's not as funny, not as good, or somebody who's a screw up that makes a lot of gaffes, and they take the heat off the president, right? They act as sort of a, comic relief, a jester, a clown. In the royal family, you have Prince Andrew and Prince Harry, who are screw ups, right? And so that the main people, the person in charge, ends up looking good in comparison. And so this is a very common thing. And the media loves to cover the screw ups. They just do. It's funny. Comedians love to joke about them. And so when Hunter Biden, who is the quintessential screw up on so many levels, because this involves more than just his screwing up, more than his crack addiction, more than his, stripper baby, right? More than all of these things, because he's made financial profit to fund his crack addiction through his father's name with foreign governments, ones that are extremely controversial at this period in time. And now there's also the racial slurs. So to put this in perspective, Hunter Biden was someone who was just always messed up, right? Apparently, maybe it's because of his trauma that he suffered, that his family suffered when his mom died and his sister died in a car accident when he was a kid, or, maybe it's living in Washington, D.C. and being a part of a political family. But he started using drugs at a young age and was in and out of rehab. And aside from his drug addiction, he liked, money. He's somebody who really wanted wealth and maybe some fame. And so he got a lot of jobs while he admits, because he's written a tell-all book about his crack addiction, that he had all of these jobs. Some of these jobs had to do with like human service things. Like one of them had to do with world hunger, involved the UN. And he also had jobs, corporate jobs, and of course the one at Burisma or whatever it was called in the Ukraine. And then he had business dealings with China. And one of his business partners came out and said that Joe Biden, in an interview, this is a guy, a former business partner of Hunter Biden and Joe Biden's brother and Joe Biden, saying that Joe Biden got $5 million from China. This is right before the election. There was an interview with Tucker Carlson, and nobody covered it. And this is a conflict of interest, because Hunter Biden was funding his crack addiction with his father's name, like with his father's influence, because nobody hires a crack addict and pays them $50,000 a month. Plus, he had lewd behaviors. He was involved with strippers and a lot of weird internet sex and just creepy stuff that was discovered on his laptop, that we know that he is a seedy person, that he was, again, in and out of rehab at least 8 times. And he says himself he couldn't remember what he was doing, but he had these high-profile, high-paying jobs, important jobs, where he couldn't perform the task, right? Crackheads aren't known for being good employees. Like, if you're addicted to crack, that's your thing. Like, you're not going to, you can't multi-purpose. You're not going to be a functioning crack addict. It overwhelms your life. And so he was smoking crack while being paid by these high-profile organizations and corporations, many of them foreign, because of his father's name and his father's influence. It wasn't because he was a good employee, because he was a crackhead. And so that's the first part to this thing. But in terms of his addiction, he was going into these private VIP rooms, champagne rooms that cost, $10,000 a night, or, thousands of dollars, in strip clubs and smoking crack and banging strippers. His marriage had fallen apart, and he started to date his brother's widow, his dead brother's widow, which is extremely effed up. He was doing this while his father was vice president. So that's all, huge stuff, right? Like, this is big bombshell stuff, and the media should be all over this. because this is a vice president's son and now the president's son and a guy who was running for president. And this is the kind of filth and dirt the media just prides itself on. It's just, big bombshell stuff, but they left it all alone. I mean, they literally didn't cover this. And if they did, they were defending Joe Biden. And when Jimmy Kimmel, who is hard on everybody and, humiliates celebrities and just a nightmare of a person, brought Hunter Biden on and praised him. I did a whole video on that. Praised him for his crack addiction, for his, coming forward. And he was just fawning all over him. And Hunter Biden was basically saying that he couldn't remember so much of these past years where he was being made, where he made lots of money off of selling access to his father. I mean, that's why you would hire Hunter Biden, because he would sell his access to his father, and his father would do something for you. Otherwise, it's not worth your money. You have to get something out of your money, and it's influence over the vice president and now president. And that's what Hunter Biden did. So if we go through some of the revelations that have come out, and many of these things have been verified, they're actual stories outside of his laptop, which isn't controversial. The media just won't acknowledge it. But these are some of the, top Hunter Biden stories. So he frequented these strip clubs in Washington, D.C., and New York City, and California, and he was smoking crack on Hollywood Boulevard. I mean, all these things connected to celebrities, all these, various nefarious activities that he was doing whilst he was being paid gobs of money by foreign corporations. And he met a stripper named Dallas who worked in New York City who was from Arkansas. That sentence alone is hilarious. Like every time I say it, it makes me feel like happy inside. The vice president's son, the now president's son, met a stripper named Dallas in New York City while he was smoking crack, and he impregnated her, and she went back to Arkansas where she had the baby, and he denied parenthood. He denied that he was the baby's father because he was so messed up on crack, he didn't remember banging a stripper named Dallas in New York City and impregnating her. He didn't remember it at all. And so she sued him for child support. And to not embarrass his dad during a crucial part of the primary process, he tried to delay the paternity tests and financial statements because it would be a nightmare for his dad to have those things up, where they are going through his finances, and trying to determine child support. So he tried to have that delayed. The judge didn't delay it. His finances came out. He admitted to custody, and he is now paying child support. And none of this was covered by the mainstream media. Like, this is how bad they're shilling, right? This is just such an embarrassment because that's a great story, and a story every late-night comedian and Saturday Night Live should be poking fun of. The president has a crackhead son that banged a stripper, didn't remember doing it because he was smoking crack, fathered an Arkansas stripper baby, an Arkansas stripper crack baby. And again, I'm not saying that about the baby. I mean, the baby's, obviously innocent. I'm saying this about the Biden family and Hunter Biden. And JoJo Magoo, the president, JoJo Magoo, never, has commented on the stripper baby. The baby isn't included in the photographs. Hunter Biden married again, and he married a woman. He met her and talked to her for 1 hour in a diner. And he told her in that hour that he was going to marry her, and now he has a baby with her. So he's got like a 2-year-old baby with a stripper, a 1-year-old baby with his new wife. He sees his dead brother's widow all the time, who he used to bang at family reunions, and they don't include the stripper baby when they're talking about the Biden grandchildren. That's a grandchild of Joe Magoo. JoJo Magoo has a stripper baby, crack baby, Arkansas grandchild somewhere out there that he doesn't acknowledge. And that's all huge news. Like any part of that, like that's a Lifetime movie right there. I mean, that's a whole set in a comedian's routine on late night with, Jimmy Fallon's or Kimmel's or any of these guys who are supposed to be comedians that, have the Democrats have their nuts in a jar. I mean, it's just so ridiculous, right? Like just that story alone. And then it was revealed that Attorney General Barr, the Attorney General for Trump, didn't pursue or didn't make public that Delaware, the Secret Service, and the FBI were all investigating a Hunter Biden incident that was documented in his laptop emails where he was having an argument with his girlfriend, his dead brother's widow, and she took his handgun because she thought he might kill himself, right? This is how unstable she thought he was. And she's no rocket scientist either. She takes his handgun and places it in the garbage of a grocery store across the street from a high school and leaves it on top with no lid on it, right? And a homeless guy finds it and takes it. And the FBI and Secret Service came in and buried the story. They didn't make this a story. This happened, I think, in 2018 or something like this, right? And so he was so unstable, and they had these bizarre arguments, and this was all documented in emails, and the government covered it up, and so did the Attorney General that everyone says was Trump's private, law firm, right? They're talking about how Trump was vindictive, and his Attorney General was covering for him all the time, and this would have helped Trump in his campaign, and this was never made public. And Joe Biden was campaigning, JoJo Magoo was campaigning on gun control, and this is a nightmare, totally irresponsible. This guy's totally irresponsible. I mean, his son is a train wreck, and all this stuff is newsworthy, and the mainstream media didn't cover that. And Joe Biden, JoJo Magoo, has campaigned on going after rich people and holding them accountable, making them pay taxes, right? And this is the epitome of privilege. Like Joe Biden's anti-rich, and he's talking to all these people, working class people, poor people. They're going after the rich, and they're going after white privilege. And does anybody have more white privilege than Hunter Biden? He's the epitome of white privilege. He should be in jail. He's been doing illegal activities. He's got corruption charges, all things that are horrible for Biden. Now he's got racist emails, gun control issues, right? Irresponsible behavior. And then he writes a book about his crack addiction, admitting to so many of these things and bringing up new things, and he's celebrated. People are talking about how great he is for coming out and receiving treatment, and they're pretending like he's better. He's never going to be better, right? Like he's been in and out of rehab 8 times, and he's not, He's got this type of personality. He's always going to, he's probably smoking crack right now. If we could get a live feed over there, I bet he's smoking crack right now, or he's sleeping off his crack from the night before. And so during this phase of his crack addiction, he drops this hard drive, this computer, this Apple computer, into the tub, takes it out, drops it off at a computer store, and doesn't remember it, right? This is just a disaster. That move itself, with all the incriminating information on it, is a treasure trove for any reporter, for any journalist. True journalists don't really vote. They don't get into politics because they cover it and they see how much these guys are liars, and they deal with political corruption all the time. And so all they care about is making a name for themselves, and the biggest sensational story out there is how they do it. And so news networks and individual news people would relish this story, this Hunter Biden story, this glorious man who is now the son of the president, who used to be, the vice president, and all of it. It's got corruption, it's got scandal, it's got crack, it's got strippers named Dallas, it's got, widows, and, you wouldn't even believe this if it was some sort of a Lifetime movie or whatever. Drama, it has all of these things. And the media is not covering this, just tells you everything you need to know. But the biggest revelation, this most recent revelation, is him using racial slurs, because this has been a big part of who Joe Biden defines himself as. The JoJo Magoo brand, about him having a strong relationship with the African American community, his relationship with Barack Obama as his president, and then how his election was saved by the black community in South Carolina and Jim Clyburn and all of it. This is something right now, there's so much, division, racial divisions now, and the cancel culture on top of it. People getting canceled for almost nothing comparatively. And his son is saying the N word in these emails, and the mainstream media is putting out crickets. Like, this is just so bad for them. Like, this stuff doesn't make me angry like it does for many of you, because it's validation. They can't say anything. Like, they can pretend, like they get out there and pretend, but how embarrassing it is for them. Like, how humiliating it is for them to suck that bad at their job. Like, to be, completely controlled, to be completely shill organizations, be one-sided politically, and just go out there and cover up news and attack people who are covering it. Call us conspiracy theorists or say that's, go after people. Not only are they not covering it and ignoring it, but they're attacking people who do. And so this validates everything they're saying. We might get some things wrong. There's a lot of dopes and a lot of disinformation out there. So, of course, we're going to say things that are, that are off a little bit or, maybe just even blatantly untrue. And so, that's not great. But the basic idea that the media is owned by the establishment and that the media is, not media at all. There's no journalism. And so when you remove that, because journalists keep the corporations and keep politicians and celebrities and everybody else in line. It's a part of the check and balance system. And when you have everybody, now with social media, because social media is completely owned and one-sided. And not one-sided in the left or the right or the Democrats or the Republicans or, on racial divisions or any of these things. They have an agenda. They're all pushing an agenda. And it seems like they're political and they're backing a point of view, but it's because they're all pushing an agenda. And that point of view is a part of that agenda. But it isn't one-sided. It isn't they're choosing the left versus the right or the Democrats or the Republicans. They're pushing this agenda through. And they're all on the same page. And that should tell you everything you know about our system because, that is not a functioning or healthy system. That's a system that's in free fall and collapsing right now. And this is why I say over and over again. There's so many indicators of this, and this is just one of them, one of the many. The immorality of people, the weakness of people, the low functioning of people, the loss of skills, the loss of survival skills, the loss of abilities, the emotional instability of the youth, getting weaker physically, emotionally, and all of it. Everything jumping the shark, sports jumping the shark, and movies and TV for the most part jumping the shark. Everything is just, like, it just shows you the system's collapsing. Because it's the end of a materialistic time and the birth of a spiritual time. That's why I talk about the heartfulness meditation all the time. Because it is bringing in a new era, a new yuga. And it's like we're breaking up with the old yuga, the old, paradigm. It's like, the end of something, and things end poorly. And it has to end poorly because people really have to understand the consequences of ignoring one's spiritual wing, and collectively everybody ignoring their spiritual wing and being completely materialistic. And what happens? People get dumber, they get weaker, they get more immoral, the family breaks down, you forget what it's like to be a natural human being. You forget about your true purpose, your spiritual purpose. You externalize everything. You're not internalized at all. You're not self-reflective. You don't have morals. People don't have, because the media should be just embarrassed by this. There should be people quitting at CNN and MSNBC and the New York Times and Washington Post for not covering Hunter Biden. There should be reporters that are outraged at what's happened, but that happened years ago. The outrage is, long since gone. And so now it's completely, one-sided and partisan media. And all of this is an indication of the system collapsing. The system is in free fall. It's already collapsed. And the reason for this is it was never good for any of us, even though we're addicted to it, even though we're dependent on it. And so now there has to be something else which incorporates an internalized connection, a heart-based connection, a love relationship with God and one's soul. an internalized connection with your soul and your heart, and a relationship through your heart with God, right? This is what the heartfulness meditation does for people, because that's the next phase. We need better people, and Hunter Biden is a classic example of why we need better people. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely reporting from the Apocalypse and the Ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.